pain. That was the first thing I knew, a searing, blinding agony that ripped through my face and skull. It felt like hot pokers had been jammed into my eye sockets, twisted and left to burn. I tried to scream, but only a choked gasp escaped my lips. My throat was raw, parched like a desert floor. I reached up to touch my face, my fingers trembling. The skin around my eyes was puffy and tight, stretched over something hard and foreign beneath my eyelids. It wasn't bone, it wasn't flesh, it was something else, something cold and metallic. A wave of nausea rolled through me, and the world, already black, spun violently. I tried to open my eyes, nothing happened. It was like they were glued shut, but worse. It felt like they weren't there at all. I was trapped in an endless, suffocating darkness. The air was thick and stale, heavy with the coppery smell of old blood and something else, something chemical and antiseptic. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the silent void. Where was I? How did I get here? The last thing I remembered was walking home from the bar, the city lights a blurry comfort. Now there was only this profound blackness, a sensory deprivation so complete it felt like being buried alive. A voice slithered out of the darkness, not from any particular direction, but from inside my own head. It was distorted, a digital rasp that grated on my nerves. "Welcome to the show!" it crackled, the sound echoing in the chamber of my skull. It wasn't just one voice. More joined in, a chorus of disembodied whispers and cruel chuckles. They were a legion, an unseen crowd surrounding me in this lightless prison. Their presence was a cold weight pressing in on me from all sides. I was their centerpiece, their main attraction, and the performance was just beginning. Panic set in, a cold, sharp claw that raked at my sanity. I scrambled backward on the rough concrete floor, my hands scraping against the gritty surface. "Who's there? What do you want?" I yelled, my voice cracking with fear and desperation. The only answer was a fresh wave of laughter, colder and more mocking than before. "We want to see," another voice hissed, its tone dripping with venomous glee. "We've given you new eyes, better eyes, eyes that let us all watch." The words didn't make sense. New eyes? The searing pain in my face suddenly felt more sinister, more terrifyingly deliberate. The voices explained, their words weaving a tapestry of pure horror inside my mind. My eyes, they told me, had been removed, carved out. In their place, they had installed miniature cameras, high-definition lenses that were now my only connection to the world. But I couldn't see. Only they could. They were streaming every second of my existence to a hidden corner of the internet, a dark web broadcast for their sick entertainment. Every twitch, every shudder, every moment of my terror was being consumed by a nameless, faceless audience. My life was no longer my own. It was content. I felt a tear escape, a hot trail of salty liquid tracing a path down my cheek. The moment it left my eyelid, a jolt of electricity shot through my body. My muscles seized, my back arched in a spasm of pure agony, and a guttural scream was ripped from my throat. The pain was excruciating, 1,000 needles stabbing into every nerve ending. Then, as quickly as it started, it stopped, leaving me gasping and trembling on the cold floor. "No tears," the first voice commanded, its digital edge sharper now. "Tears are boring, they blur the feed. We don't like that." My breath came in ragged, shallow gulps. I tried to control the rising tide of hysteria, the overwhelming urge to break down and sob. The threat of the shock was a physical presence, a live wire held against my skin. Then I felt something wet and warm trickle from my nose, dripping onto my lips. Blood, the metallic taste filled my mouth. From the darkness, a new sound erupted. It wasn't laughter, it was cheering, a cacophony of guttural, excited shouts that filled my head, celebrating the sight of my own blood. They were animals, a pack of hyenas delighting in my suffering. "More!" a voice demanded, a hungry growl that promised further torment. "Show us more!" The realization crashed down on me with the force of a physical blow. My pain was their pleasure. My suffering was their sport. Every time I bled, they cheered. Every time I cried out, they were entertained. I was a puppet, and they were the masters, pulling my strings with jolts of electricity and the promise of more agony. I was trapped in a theatre of cruelty, the star of a snuff film being broadcast live, and the audience was baying for blood. My blood. My mind reeled, trapped in a monstrous reality. The cheering faded, replaced by a silence more terrifying than any noise. I was being watched, every move a spectacle for unseen eyes. I had to do something, anything. Escape was a fragile ember in the darkness. I forced myself up, muscles screaming, and began to crawl. Each inch forward was a victory. The silence from my audience was unnerving, but hope was my only weapon. My hand found a wall, cold, damp, unforgiving. I followed it, desperate for any sign of escape. I moved through darkness, my world reduced to the cold texture of concrete beneath trembling fingers. The space was larger than a cell, an open, silent prison. The silence was a predator, every heartbeat thunderous. My hand found a corner, then something colder, metal, a door. Hope surged as I gripped the handle and pulled. It was locked, unmoving. Despair crashed over me. A voice crackled in my head, mocking, "Trying to leave so soon?" Then white-hot agony exploded through me. The electricity was a living thing, flooding me with pain. My muscles locked, my body convulsed, and I couldn't let go of the handle. The crowd cheered, loving my agony. When the current stopped, I collapsed, trembling and numb, the smell of burning hair in the air. Blood was premium content here. Pain was currency. I understood now, any hope would be crushed. My only option was to endure, to survive, and to learn the rules of their twisted game. Huddled on the floor, I tried to piece together the rules. Tears meant a punishing shock. Hope brought agony. Blood was rewarded with cheers. The audience craved suffering, directing me like a show. My pain was the script. I forced myself not to cry, grounding myself in the pain. Then I heard a low, rhythmic thudding through the concrete. It wasn't in my head. Something heavy was being slammed nearby. I wasn't alone. Thump, thump, thump. The sound echoed through my cell, a morbid heartbeat, relentless and chilling. I wasn't alone in this nightmare. There were others suffering, their pain bleeding through the walls. Then, a scream, raw, human, piercing the darkness. My blood ran cold. Suddenly the wall began to move, grinding upwards, letting in a sliver of grey light. My cell was merging with another. The show was about to get a co-star, and I had a front-row seat to someone else's agony. As the concrete partition rose, dim light spilled into my cell, revealing another identical box beside mine. In that cell, a woman trembled, her eyes vacant, dark lenses where her eyes should be. She was like me. The wall halted, leaving us together, two unwilling performers in a larger shared cage. For a moment, a flicker of connection passed between us. We were not alone. In this inhuman place, a glimmer of shared humanity remained. The silent audience did not wait long to make their presence known. As soon as a fragile understanding passed between me and Anna, a voice boomed in our heads. It was the first voice, the ringmaster of this circus of pain, but now it was addressing us both. "Welcome, viewers, to the main event," it announced, its digital tone filled with theatrical flair. "Tonight, we have a special presentation, 2 for the price of 1. The words were for the unseen watchers, but they echoed directly in our skulls, a constant reminder that our most intimate moments of terror were public entertainment. Anna flinched as the voice spoke, a fresh wave of tears streaming down her face, and just as they had with me, the captors responded instantly. A sharp crackling sound filled the air, and her body seized in a violent convulsion. She let out a sharp cry of pain, her back arching off the floor. The jolt was quick, a brutal punctuation mark to her display of emotion. "No tears, Anna," the voice chided, its tone mockingly gentle. "You'll smudge the lens. Our viewers demand a clear picture." I watched, helpless, as she gasped for breath. The lesson I'd learned in Blood and Agony now being taught to her. The audience began to cheer. The sound was a deafening roar in my mind, a wave of pure sadistic glee. They loved the interaction, the punishment, the sight of this new victim learning the rules. My own presence seemed to have faded into the background for them. I was old news. Anna was the fresh meat, and they were savouring her initiation. "What do they want from us?" she sobbed, her voice trembling as she fought to suppress more tears. She looked at me, her camera eyes wide with a desperate plea for answers, for some kind of sense in this madness. "They want a show," I rasped, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. "They want pain. They want blood." As I spoke, a new element was introduced into our shared cell. A low hiss emanated from a small grate in the ceiling, and a thin metallic object descended on a wire dangling between us. It was a knife, a simple, cruel-looking combat knife, its blade gleaming in the dim grey light. It spun slowly, suspended at eye level, a silent invitation. The voices grew louder, more excited. The cheering intensified. The next act of their performance had been scripted, and the main prop had just been delivered. The knife hung between us, a pendulum of death. The audience wanted us to turn on each other, to become monsters for their entertainment. Anna stared at the blade, breath ragged. This was a test, one meant to break us. Suddenly, Anna lunged, not for me, but for the knife. With a cry, she plunged it into her own thigh. The audience erupted. This was what they wanted, unfiltered, self-inflicted violence. As Anna writhed in agony, masked figures emerged. The show would go on. The two masked brutes entered, silent and efficient, ignoring me as they descended on Anna. One yanked the knife from her thigh, tossing it aside, while the other stood guard, a warning in his posture. Without a word, the kneeling figure produced a field stapler and began closing Anna's wound, her screams echoing off the concrete. I watched, powerless, as the audience's anticipation hung heavy in the air. The stagehands worked with chilling detachment, prepping Anna for the next act, indifferent to her agony. I was no longer a participant, just another spectator in this theatre of cruelty. Rage flared inside me as Anna's screams faded into the background. While the stagehands focused on her, I spotted the bloodied knife on the floor. Inch by inch, I crawled toward it, feigning defeat, desperate to be invisible. My fingers closed around the handle. Anna's pain now a weapon in my grip. I didn't know what I'd do, but for the first time I had a choice. This knife wasn't for them. It was my key to a different kind of escape. In a place built on control, I finally had a sliver of my own. The stagehands left, leaving Anna broken and me clutching the hidden knife. The audience's interest waned. Hungry for a new spectacle, I realized the cameras in my eyes were my prison and my only leverage. Destroying them would cut the feed, denying the audience their show. The pain would be immense, but it would be my pain, my rebellion. I couldn't save Anna or myself, but I could sabotage their cruel machine. For the first time, I had a purpose to end the broadcast on my terms. The cell sealed shut. Anna's ragged breaths filled the silence. The audience's voices grew louder, demanding I perform next. The ringmaster's command was clear. It was my turn to bleed, but I had the knife and a plan. They wanted self-mutilation, a new act of horror for their entertainment. They thought they controlled the script, but I was about to cut my own strings. I steadied myself, ready to give them a show they'd never forget. Alone on the blood-stained stage, I picked up the knife, the audience's anticipation a roar in my mind. They demanded I outdo Anna to turn their weapon on myself. I let them believe I'd comply, feeding their hunger for violence. I held the knife to the cameras, letting them savor the moment. But Anna's defiance had shown me another way. I wouldn't follow their script. I'd end the show on my own terms. The finale would be mine to write. The demand echoed in my head, do the same, but better. They wanted self-mutilation to see me break for their amusement. The pressure was suffocating, 1,000 invisible hands pushing the blade toward my flesh. But this pain would be mine. The choice would be mine. The target was not my flesh, but their window into my world. With a guttural roar, I destroyed the camera. The cheering died, replaced by static, blessed, absolute silence. The world went silent. The legion of voices in my head vanished. The silence was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. I had cut the cord. I had blinded them. For the first time, I was alone in my own head. The victory was immense, but the pain was overwhelming. My face was a ruin of blood and wires. I had ruined their show, but I was still trapped. Then, a heavy metallic clank. The door was being unlocked from the outside. I could only lie there, helpless, listening to the slow, heavy creak of the door swinging open. The heavy metal door groaned open, my death warrant signed. I lay in my own blood, waiting for the finishing blow. Footsteps echoed, slow and deliberate. A man in charge, cologne cutting through the stench, loomed over me. "That was quite the performance," he said, voice smooth and amused. "We're not going to kill you. You're far too valuable. The show must go on." The darkness I created was closing in, becoming something more than just the absence of light. The man's words echoed, a fate worse than death. My rebellion mistaken for ambition. I was offered a promotion, not freedom. I hadn't cut the strings, I'd tangled myself deeper in the puppet show. Hands gripped me, dragging me from my cell toward a new, unknown role. As darkness swallowed me, I realized I hadn't escaped the dark web. I'd just logged in.